evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio. It's your old friend Virgil back once again for another amazing episode. And we're very excited to have my co-host Mark here, but also our good friend back in the house, Mike Kenny. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, guys. Happy to be back.
You guys will come to know Mike as kind of the resident Disney expert, but he's also co-host of the I Eat Movies podcast and super fan of really the Mahoning Drive-In Theater and a part of the family here. So
Yes.
So we are going to be zeroing in on what is going to be our first 2021 Disney outing with Darkside of Disney. Now, that event is a 2-day event, Friday and Saturday, and it is a double feature both nights of the classics. Well, that has quotations around it, depending how you feel about these movies. The classics, Return to Oz and Watcher in the Woods. Now, that was always the plan, Mark will attest, since the beginning, was to really start this off with an introduction to the darker side of Disney and showing people that we have access to more than just the bubblegum prince right out of the gate. And Mark, I think we talked about Return to Oz way early as this being kind of the perfect intro for the Mahoning crowd.
Yeah, we had various ideas of how to kick off this Disney newly established or reestablished Disney relationship. Initially, we said, Jeff was saying we should go with Stone Cold classics. And I looked and I'm like, we could do, they have on film Swiss Family Robinson and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but those are each like 2.5 hours long. And if you're looking for a family night, getting the kids tucked back into their own beds at 3 a.m. is probably not going to bring a lot of families out. So I think you had the idea of going with the idea of the dark side of Disney and doing some edgier movies that some of us, people our age or a little older, a little younger, remember. And Return to Oz was always part of that.
I think the reason that kind of rose to the top of the list of the available prints to us, which for people who aren't in the know, that's live action specifically, that's 35 millimeter only, which means that if they don't have a print of it in the Disney Vault, that's not on the list. And that's not gettable.
Should we talk about the original idea for this weekend? Can we spoil that, or is that going to remain a secret? The original idea for this weekend was Friday would be the light side of Disney.
Yes!
And Saturday would be the dark side of Disney. And the original Friday lineup was 1982's Tron and then the more recent Tron Legacy. And we were excited. We commissioned artwork that's amazing. I was excited for the potential poster, let alone seeing these movies. And I had seen Tron opening weekend when it came out with my uncle. And I remember that movie not doing terribly well. And it wasn't a movie that really found its audience until cable and home video years later. And then it spawned this really good sequel with Tron Legacy. So we had that all set to go. And we found out Disney doesn't have a print of Tron.
Yeah.
It's just, there's not a Tron print.
That was total wrench, But yeah, that's right. I think I blocked it out in my brain that happened because it was like, all right, we got to move forward. The downside with the Disney situation is they are still slow moving and coming out of the COVID madness and all that, as everybody is. And it took a long time to get those approvals. And this event, this weekend, we actually only had 3 weeks to promote. So it's really nice that we get to jump in and do a deep dive. But yeah, Tron and Tron Legacy, perfect double feature, smashes together, no brainer. The idea of the light side, dark side Friday thing, I think it's a no brainer. But when we had 0 time and it came down to 0 hour, the idea of just spreading that program Friday and Saturday really works as well.
Because Return to Oz has a strong following and really has for years and years.
Yeah, it's as Mike, I'm sure, can attest. It is it's one of those movies that if you saw it as a child, which I think if you have, it really stuck with you. I was going to say like a certain parent might introduce that to their kid. I guess when it first came out, there were a lot of fooled parents into that one,
When Return to Oz originally came out, I think it's one of those movies I say I was just a little too old for. Now, I mean, I was 11 when that came out, so you'd think I was sort of the target audience, but I think at the time I did not want to see a scary Oz. I think the idea of anything that was the Wizard of Oz that wasn't the Wizard of Oz was offensive to me as a kid. And I remember hearing the reviews, people saying, this is really scary. This shouldn't be marketed to kids. It's, Dorothy getting electroshock therapy and all that. I remember like Siskel and Ebert and Leonard Maltin and stuff being really offended by this movie, that somebody had taken a dark approach to this, beloved family classic. So I've actually still never seen it.
Ooh, well, you are certainly in for
You're
quite
in
a treat.
for a treat, yeah.
Definitely. I will add that as much as it is a disappointment that the light cycle of Disney didn't get off, I think that the biggest disappointment for the Mahoning crowd is they're going to miss me not being in a glow-in-the-dark onesie that weekend. So that's the real disappointment, because I would have absolutely done that.
Maybe we'll do that as like a crew screening, just to make that happen for us.
Just to make that happen. Yeah. Well, Mark, I can attest that for people like yourself who haven't seen it, or people that grew up and were arguably traumatized by it is there's certainly no Disney film quite like it before or since. It's really interesting. But the theme of this weekend, Darkside of Disney, it's just totally in the fold of what the Mahoning does, and does so well, I think, is it's an ingenious way into the Disney vaults, is to do something a little bit on the edgier side, and that's what these two features specifically are doing. These two films are coming at a very interesting time in the Disney studios. Now, if we could just rewind a little bit, when Walt Disney died in 1966, the world really lost an American icon. But even more so, this dream factory that he had built had really lost the captain of its ship. And in the 20 plus years since his death, the people that were left behind there, the animators and all of his collaborators, were left kind of thinking, not so much thinking about how they could push the envelope more as Walt Disney would have kind of instructed them to do. They were caught in the past thinking, what would Walt do? So while in those 20 years there are good films, a lot of people have warm memories of stuff, from the post-Disney era, it wasn't until we get to the early 80s where other people were coming into the company, and they quickly realized that they needed to innovate themselves, because Disney was not doing so well at that point in time. It was really bad days. I think specifically it came to a head in the mid-80s when their latest animated film, The Black Cauldron, was bested at the box office several months before that by another animated competitor. That movie was the Care Bears movie.
Wow.
So when
that's
you
a low.
That's a low.
That's a
So yeah. So when you certainly lose at the box office, when Disney, the gold standard of animation, loses to a film like the Care Bears movie, they realize that not only the Disney animation division was in trouble, but arguably the whole company could have been in trouble. So a few years prior to that, it's really this half-decade period where there was some really interesting stuff going on. And there's one person where, obviously being in the shadow of Walt Disney, there's few people that can kind of come in and do something really revolutionary. And there's one person in particular that I think in the history books they tend to forget, and it's Walt's own son-in-law, Ron Miller, who was a former Los Angeles Ram. He had done, held various positions throughout the company throughout the years. And then when the 80s started, he figured it's time to innovate this thing a little bit. We need to kind of open this up to maybe a younger adult audience. And that's when we start seeing things like Midnight Madness, some more teenage fare, if you will. And then we're kind of delving into the two films that we're going to be showing this weekend, Return to Oz and Watcher in the Woods. So, I just really want to give a lot of credit to Ron Miller, because at a time in the company where so many people had kind of lost their way and lost their belief in the impossible, it was Ron Miller who really stuck to his guns and thought, no, we can challenge the audiences a little bit more. We can do things that not, people will necessarily think are Disney. We can do that and see and test the waters with it. So sometimes they didn't always work, but other times I think that they really paid off, especially in retrospect, when you think of, the trippy space odyssey of the black hole to, the computer-generated game changer that was Tron.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of really creative, ingenious things, maybe not wholesome kiddie fare necessarily. But yeah, like the two films in particular, Return to Oz and The Watcher of the Woods, are two that strike a chord. They don't necessarily seem like wholesome Disney films, but they absolutely struck a chord with the audiences that saw them. And then in the years since, these are films that have certainly lasted with people that they want to introduce them to, you know, younger audiences or their own kids now. So I think that that's really special.
Now, fly away with Dorothy and her wonderful new friends, the Gump, half moose, half flying sofa, a talking chicken.
Where are we anyway?
Jack, and Tip-Top the mechanical soldier, to save the Kingdom of Oz from the evil princes and a king with a body of rock. In a magical new movie, Return to Oz.
I thought with Watcher in the Woods, with the double feature that we're doing, Return to Oz is a movie that has only grown in stature over the years. You have people, again, I would say people younger than me. It's a beloved film. It's kinder trauma, as they say. And I knew that was one that was going to pull a crowd because people are really into it. Watcher in the Woods is the kind of film that I think fewer people know about, but the people who do know about it are going to lose their minds at the fact that they can see it on 35, or they can see it at all at a drive-in, because I'm not sure that film has played, aside from maybe the occasional retrospective, probably much of anywhere since 1980. And it's not had a very robust life on home video. I think it got probably one of those white clamshell Disney VHS releases in its day. And Anchor Bay put it out on DVD. And I don't know that it's come out in any other format or even really had much play. It might be available on Disney Plus. I'm not sure.
And that's why we thought it was a really great choice with both of these. Is going through that list, it's obviously gem after gem after gem. But the thing that Mark and I loved about that list is like, that was Disney, you know, like those moments of like, they own that, you know?
Right.
So that's really what we wanted to tap into.
The Disney library we have access to is really the umbrella of Disney subsidiaries as well. We have Buena Vista Pictures and Walt Disney Pictures and Hollywood Pictures and Touchstone Pictures and on and on and on, and in a wider array of eras and genres than you'd think. They don't have prints for everything. Notable exceptions like Mary Poppins, they just don't have prints for. Yeah. And I think it's because for the longest time, Disney had this no repertory rule once they stopped doing their re-releases, and sometime I think in the 80s probably, so that there wasn't a need to keep striking new prints because they weren't letting anybody play them. So I think in many cases what you're getting are probably original release prints. Yeah, I'd be very curious to see what these look like when they hit our screen. But I want to say with some kind of confidence that for anybody who can get out to this show, you're probably not going to have another chance to see Watcher on the Woods in the big screen on film in your lifetime, unless you're like Tony Stark and you can just throw that suitcase on the ground and get the body armor and fly anywhere in the world that might be crazy enough to show Watcher in the Woods again.
Yeah, I'm actually happy that Mark brought that up because that is a really important point. In this era of streaming wars and whatnot, Return to Oz and The Watcher in the Woods are not on Disney Plus. So all the more reason for you to come, because Disney Plus has done a really good job in presenting a lot of the older titles in 4K quality. But the two films that we're showcasing this weekend are not on Disney Plus. So if you're trying to find them in high definition on that format or on that streaming channel, you're not going to find them. So what better way to experience them than on 35 millimeter on the greatest CinemaScope that I know, a CinemaScope screen that I know.
That's right, baby. And maybe you guys can talk a little bit about your experiences with these films, the past experiences. But for me, it was probably HBO home video for Return to Oz. And just like a lot of people, ooh, I love Wizard of Oz. Nice hook, you know? And you get kind of side-swiped with this totally unique, weird world that, again, at times can be for a kid a little frightening, especially going into it not prepared what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But I think just like a lot of movies in our childhood, it's kind of that rite of passage thing. And a lot of people who hold it really close in their heart is like, ooh, that freaked me out and I loved it. You know what I mean? So I think for the Mahoning audience, as kind of the spoon-fed, hey, this is an easy approach to come into Disney. It's a lot easier than, you know, selling the Mahoning crowd on coming to a bubblegum Disney weekend right out the gate. Although we will be doing plenty of those, classics without a doubt.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that you touched on that, because you're right. It is a rite of passage, getting the bejesus scared out of you as a kid, and to kind of carry that tradition on, because, yeah, I mean, no way about it. These are some cult gems here. These are some deep cuts from the Disney vaults. These are definitely playing on some scarier themes. These are not, like you said, the wholesome golden age Disney films of yesteryear, but I think that that's what really separates them apart from it. My experience with Return to Oz, at least actually with both of these films, I didn't really have a childhood experience with these per se, but being a huge Disney fan, just every Disney film that I could get my hand on or haven't seen, I tried to do. The Watcher in the Woods is a relatively recent watch for me. I've always heard about the reputation of Watcher, but it wasn't until semi-recently that I caught up with it finally. Whereas Return to Oz, I feel like if you're kind of even remotely in the know with Disney and kind of the cult discoveries in the Disney catalog, Return to Oz always comes across on your radar. So when I did see that, I said, this is not home. This is not the home that we remember.
Yeah, but when I head back to Kansas, please.
Yeah. Like, that black and white Kansas didn't seem so bad anymore.
That was 1985, right, for Return to Oz?
That was 1985. Return to Oz opened on June 21st, 1985, opposite. Can you just get ready for this lineup as if, every weekend in the 80s wasn't awesome? Return to Oz opened opposite St. Elmo's Fire, Cocoon, and Life Force.
Come on.
How do you even make a decision on that? Just give me. I'm clearing the weekend. The weekend. That's what it was. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love little facts like that, where you can really go back in time and be like, okay, when we had Andre out for Monster Squad, we were talking about, how that whole box office debacle happened because Lost Boys was in the mix at that time. And, people were really into this, this edgier adult version, if you will, of the vampire group. And then these little kids come in, and it was just bad timing. But with this situation, I just think it was such a unique sell and a unique angle. And like you said, this is the time that they got a bit more experimental. And for somebody who is VHS era, home video era discovery, it's a perfect discovery piece to be like, oh, wow, this is something else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the genesis for Return to Oz is much like Watcher in the Woods. It's a pretty interesting. Both of these films are very go for broke productions. Again, we're going back to a time where Disney was really trying their hands at just something that wasn't of the norm from them or what people necessarily expected. So, interestingly enough, Return to Oz kind of formed during a brainstorming session with Walter Murch, who was a noted sound editor and sound mixer for people like George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, and he was having a brainstorming meeting with some of the production chief from Disney. And in that meeting, Murch discovered that Disney still owned the rights to Frank L. Baum's classic tales. This production chief had no idea of this. He had no idea that Disney was sitting on the rights that were, might I add, soon to be expiring. So they explored the idea of what they wanted to do. So they were going to use Baum's second and third stories as springboards for this new feature film that very clearly started to they were envisioning it with these brooding dark clouds over the production, which obviously found themselves on the screen, but also behind the scenes too. Murch was a first-time director. This is his only film ever, because I guess he was so jaded from the experience. But what a first and only film to go out on. But yeah, I mean,
I'm telling you,
it's nuts. It really is. And this film is not. This is not the Oz that we quite remember from 1939. Certainly not. This is a totally different, unique, and really inventive sort of environment. And again, it's genuinely frightening at times. I mean, it's eye candy galore. It's using so many different forms of movie magic, from puppetry to optical effects. We're seeing so many things thrown out on the screen. And again, it adds to this aura of films that kind of play in the fantastical and the frightening. I'm thinking of things like The Dark Crystal and Legend. Return to Oz definitely fits very handsomely on that same list, but it, on the same hand, it really stands alone, being those are that, and this is this.
It's that dark fantasy realm that obviously for the Mahoning crowd works very well. Some of those titles you mentioned are home runs here.
Yeah.
And that really is the thought process behind the programming of all this stuff. Is we will eventually be working these into weekends and into lineups and things like that, but we wanted to have a specific kind of outing right out the gate that was very much like, okay, here we go, like opening up the floods. So it's really nice to see everybody kind of supporting this effort, all that stuff, getting on board, but more the amount of requests that have come since we've said or made the announcement that we're working with Disney is pretty staggering, and it's all over the map.
Yeah, there's so many people have had so many requests, and we always have to sort of gently remind folks that we can't get the animation. Although, with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, we can sort of bend that rule a little bit because there's a whole bunch of animation in that film.
Yeah.
Disney is so beloved by so many generations of people. So many people like me grew up in an era where they still did re-release these films theatrically every so many years. And you had your weekly... On ABC, you had the Disney Sunday movie, and you had The Wonderful World of Disney that was a syndicated package, and there was just so much Disney everywhere, not even counting when home video came and the Disney Channel came to town. And there are just so many, again, generations, I guess, that have never had the opportunity to see these movies on the big screen. So I'm kind of thrilled that we're able to do that. And really one of, I don't know how many entities in this country are able to do that. So it is with great pride and responsibility that we unleash these two films.
That we present Return to Oz.
Gonna mess your kids up. When Return to Oz came out, I seem to remember it getting a little bit of a merchandising push. Like Disney either was hopeful or confident. I remember like the little storybooks you could buy.
Oh, I thought you were going to say action figs and stuff. I was like, oh my God, I need a tiki-talk.
I'm not sure, but I feel like there were some semblance of products were attached to this that not a lot of people bought at the time.
What I always looked at Return to Oz as is, even though I had the experience when I was younger, it was the movie we'd watch at parties and stuff in high school and college. It was literally like a trip. You could put it on and it's like watching Pink Floyd's The Wall or something, where it's just like, what is happening? Why is she rocking around with a rooster the whole time? Where did this robot come from? Giant pumpkin guy. I don't remember that from the original. So it was a series of that, of like, just a fun ride,
Well, that's telling that you were watching it in high school and college, because I have my own hypothesis that the makers of the film, the people that really brought this film together, clearly were the same audiences who were watching Fantasia during its 70s re-release under questionable substances. I think that's the only way that we got Return to Oz, frankly.
It's something, I'll tell you that. I'm definitely excited to jump back into this kind of with the fully fresh eyes, because I don't know if I've sat and actually like watched this movie all the way through, not just in the background or something at a party, for years, maybe since I was a kid.
I think, the beauty of hosting this weekend and, the countless single feature showings that you guys are going to be doing all season is the Disney studio in particular. There's a connection that audiences have seen. I mean, it's crazy to think that we're 2 years away from their 100th anniversary. The Disney studios have been around for nearly 100 years. And I think that the special thing and the allure to Disney is that, unlike something like the Bond franchise where everybody can say, oh, well, I kind of like them all, but, like Sean Connery's my Bond or Pierce Brosnan's my Bond. Disney is a unique case where there's really no generational division. It's not like the audiences that were watching Snow White and Pinocchio really just love them. I mean, I love getting on the topic of Disney features with people and really pressing them like, oh, like what are your top 5 Disney ones? Like just the other day I was talking with somebody and they told me that 2 of their favorite films were The Emperor's New Groove and The Aristocats. We're talking like 30 years of difference. So, you know, anybody that loves Disney can say, I love Pinocchio and I love Beauty and the Beast. And I, you know, like it spans the gamut of, you know,
huge umbrella.
It's a huge umbrella, and it's really great to see that. Whereas, you know, other people might think, oh, I'm not going to watch something from the 30s or the 40s. It's really movie magic incarnate, you know, just seeing that all. And Disney, you know, audiences just seem to flock to it no matter what decade it was released in. It's just some of the best of the best. So, in particular with this programming, again, it can't be stressed enough. These are some really deep cuts and some really interesting, edgier choices that, again, I can't think off the top of my head the last time that these got screened on 35 millimeter. So bravo again, guys.
It's exciting. It's very exciting.
Look closely. What do you see? What do you think you see? What does it mean? Where does it begin or end? And who knows the answer? Betty Davis, Carol Baker, David McCallum, and Lynn Holly Johnson.
The Watcher in the Woods.
So I actually remember when Watcher in the Woods came out in 1980. I was 6 years old and I watched a lot of TV. And it was at a time when you had TV spots for movies that could be legit creepy. Like there's some infamous ones like the It's Alive TV spot and the Suspiria TV spot. And I remember seeing the TV ads for Watcher in the Woods as a little kid, and it looked really scary to me. And then it came up as PG at the end. And I had no concept that it was a Disney release, but I remember even as a 6-year-old being like offended that there would be a scary movie that was PG, that there was a movie that kids could get into that would be that scary. And I never saw it until I think I said this earlier. I never saw this until it hit DVD from Anchor Bay sometime in, I think it was the 90s, early 2000s. And I love the vibe because it has the vibe of those creepy movies that I used to watch on TV or creepy anthology TV shows and things like that. And it has a pretty good cast. I mean, you've got Betty Davis.
Stellar.
You've got Lynn Holly Johnson, who was, you know, I'm not sure exactly when Ice Castles was, but I know she was a year ahead of starring in For Your Eyes Only, my favorite Bond film. And then you had, I believe, Kyle Richards, who was the younger sister of Kim Richards, who had starred in the Witch Mountain movies that I loved as a kid, and then who would go on to be on such notable things as Hello, Larry and Some Real Housewives show. But she's arguably far more famous now for her reality TV work than the movies and the TV shows that she did for decades. Mike, do you have any info or insight into Watcher in the Woods? Because it's a fascinating kind of horror movie that Disney.
Yeah, what a weird era. Another one of those ones where it's like, this is Disney, like so dark.
Right. Yeah. And again, you know, this film is very interesting. Going back to Ron Miller again, this is a film that definitely fell under the radar of Ron Miller, whereas Return to Oz, he wasn't directly involved, but it was released and produced under his tenure with the company. Whereas The Watcher in the Woods, very much under Ron Miller's kind of umbrella. Again, you mentioned that great cast, Betty Davis, Kyle Richards, who's only 2 years removed from playing little Lindsay Wallace in Halloween. It's Disney entering some far more ghostly territory that, you know, we haven't seen them do since, you know, like Legend of Sleepy Hollow or something like that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This film, Ron Miller actually selected the director, John Huff, based on his film, I'm sure a favorite of all three of us, The Legend of Hell House. John Huff, no stranger to Disney. He actually directed both Witch Mountain films. I believe a little birdie told me Escape to Witch Mountain will be playing at the Mahoning this season.
I heard that.
I did hear that. But yeah, he's no stranger to the Disney family, but of course came predominantly from a horror genre. He did such great things as Twins of Evil, The Incubus, and of course, like I mentioned, The Legend of Hell House, which got him this job. Similar to Return to Oz, a bit of a checkered little production history. This was not exactly an easy movie to make, nor to sell. There was a lot of heated confrontations between Ron Miller and John Huff over, you know, that wonderful term, tone. The tone's a little too scary for the kids. This is not exactly what we wanted, but we wanted it. You know, it's one of those things. But this film in particular, had a limited release at New York's Ziegfeld Theater on April 17th, 1980. So yes, the 1980 release date is accurate, but the road to it is a little bit more spotty. So it released in April of 80. They had plans to release it to several hundred more theaters by about June of that same year, but only after 10 days and really harsh critical and public negative feedback, Disney pulled the film and they sent it back for additional photography, including a completely reworked ending. And then it was because of them removing it from the schedule, Disney had to fill the bill somewhere, so they re-released Mary Poppins because that's a surefire classic that'll keep the family and the kids entertained. So it wasn't until I think about 18 months later that Disney properly re-released it on October 9th, 1981. They really dumped it in less than 300 screens that year. The film, the week that it released, it didn't even infiltrate the top 10 at the box office, which, if you were wondering, Mark, the week that dropped, Paternity, starring Burt Reynolds, was number 8 that weekend.
Reynolds.
I like Paternity.
So,
was that number 1 at the box?
That was number 1, and number 5.
Power of Burt.
Yeah,
can't mess with that in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, like, really, Paternity was number 1. That's the kind of stuff that was driving them. But, Raiders of the Lost Ark was still hanging on. They were number 5. Mommy Dearest was number 6 that weekend. But yeah, Watcher in the Woods didn't even infiltrate the top 10. Barely pulled in any money. It was a pretty big disaster. But again, we're going back to that tone. This is very much ghostly territory that we're entering. I really like the feel of it, where the two sisters in the film, Kyle Richards and the older sister, they're both very noticeably American teenagers, and they're being transported to this foreign kind of English countryside. So I like that. It's very much playing to the films of this era, where the parents are there, but they're very noticeably out of the picture for most of it. So it's the children really fending for themselves against these supernatural forces, a real kind of, big thing that was going on in the 80s, as, we mentioned with Monster Squad, the Goonies. It's a lot of the kids where, they have a baseball bat and, some string, and they have to fight the ghosts or something, like that. That's really what we're getting in The Watcher in the Woods. But it's these spooky supernatural vibes that kind of add to the aura of this film, and it's kind of hilarious to think that the original ending that they were going with almost painted it into a much more sci-fi territory where there's like an alien involved. It just sounds horrendous.
Really?
Yeah, like it totally throws the tone off of like the previous 75 minutes that we've been, privy to, and then at the end we're like, wait, it's been an alien the whole time. So
Crazy.
And they saved that, and
call.
they put it into the 4th Indiana Jones movie.
Yes.
Actually, if I'm not mistaken, the Anchor Bay DVD presents that original cut, does it not?
They do, yeah. It's in there as a special feature. They keep the film intact as it was released in 81, but that original ending is in there as a bonus feature, so everybody can be just as perplexed by that when they
rules.
watch.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff that you're going to get here with Mike, is those deep cut goodness. I just love it.
It's great. And as if to, I will mention this this weekend because it's just too juicy of a detail for, film fans, horror fans alike. The film, or the house that the family takes over, you're not seeing double vision at all. This is a very memorable location. This is actually the same frightening pad that we all remember from Robert Weiss's The Haunting. That's why, yes. So that's why it's
my brain just blew up.
That is
it's pretty crazy.
That's damn near my favorite horror movie. That's amazing. I had no idea.
2 peas in a pod. Yeah. I mean, and if that doesn't add to your enjoyment, it's one of those things where I think, I know I've seen that house before. And then once you kind of get down to it, you're like, that's it. It's The Haunting. It's The Haunting house.
Oh,
just
so
as eerie as it
good.
was in the 60s. It's fantastic.
Well, we should say for this event, we'll be starting it off with introductions by our resident Disney expert, who certainly people are going to fall in love with over this series, and I'm sure be demanding for more deep inside goodness. But you guys can rely on it. Our plan is to do this regularly, right, Mark?
Oh yeah, yeah. The plan is to have, if he's willing and able to be there, have Mike come on out and do intros for these films, and continue to do podcasts like this where we dive a little bit deeper than the time span of an intro will allow for us to discuss these Disney movies, and Mike's knowledge and what he digs up from the crypt of dark secrets for Disney. And we also want to mention that we will have a trailer reel of Disney trailers for all of our Disney features provided to us from the deep archives of Exhumed Films. So that will set the tone nicely. After Mike's intro, we'll delve into some previews for films that may or may not ever be coming to our screen.
Well, Mike wasn't at yesterday's screening, the Sunday screening that we just came off of, but it was our first Spaghetti Sunday. The weather was gorgeous. The sky was beautiful. And Harry supplied the trailer reel ahead of time. And I always say it, if Harry's offering to put together a trailer reel, you never say no, because he delivers. So for you guys that are on the fence of coming out, that's an added bonus, because you know there's going to be some really fun stuff before the films hit the screen.
Attention, please. A $50 reward will be paid for information leading to the arrest and conviction of anyone caught stealing our speakers. If you accidentally pull a speaker loose, don't worry. Just turn it in. There is no charge, and we'd appreciate it.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience, Mike, this last weekend? We just came off of It Came from the 80s. You were there both nights, right?
Oh, yeah. I was there both nights. I got in real early. It's always a blast. I mean, I've said it time and time again. If I'm not at the Mahoning lot, it stands to reason that I'm probably in Disney World then. That's the only good reason for me not to be there. But yeah, It Came from the 80s again, you know, a joint collaboration by our friends at the Mahoning and Exhumed Films. 6 films over 2 nights. We had some great ones. We had The Keep on Friday, From Beyond, and Amityville 2, The Possession, the best and sleaziest of the Amityville films. That was a blast. You know, great weather, really wonderful moonlight we had that night. And rolling off into Saturday, we had Child's Play, the original Child's Play, which is great.
Packed the house.
Totally, right? Saturday was fantastic.
That was crazy.
Terrifically underrated score in Child's Play, I think. I really like that.
Yeah.
Then we had Basket Case, a 4K presentation of that one. And then we ended the night off with Of Unknown Origin, the great Peter Weller film where he beats a subway rat and is brownstone to hell.
What a freaking trip that was. I got to say, that was a first for me. I've never seen that film.
It's a kooky one.
And I love that. That's what I love about Harry's programming, is I can almost guarantee that he kind of works in this magic, you know what I mean, of a deep cut.
And that's from the director of Cobra and Tombstone, one or more of which will be hitting our screen. George P. Cosmatos, yes, son of whom did Mandy and Beyond the Black Rainbow. So yeah, what a career.
That's right.
Just to bring it back to that same director, he directed Rambo First Blood Part 2, which came in the box office number 2 behind Cocoon the same weekend Return to Oz opened.
Full circle, baby.
There it is,
That's
guys.
why he's the pro. That's why he's the pro. Well, I can say it. We're super excited to have you as part of this audio venture. And this weekend really felt like kind of a homecoming for a lot of people. A lot of our real regulars that are there for the big Exhumed events were out. And you're certainly part of that in a big way. And just so the Patreon members know, we are going to be filming these as well. It's going to be kind of alongside Jeff when he does his intro to the films, an intro to the whole crowd that's there. Mike will be right there by his side. People can get all that great info right out the gate. But if you guys aren't able to make it, we're going to try to film that every single time and get it up there for you guys to enjoy, because it's gems. I mean, that's why. Well, why don't you tell I hope it's okay for me to say it, or maybe we have said it before. Why are you the resident Disney expert?
I mean, I wish I had a good answer for that. Cinema just in general has just invaded my life, for better or worse. But yeah, it's the Disney studio that I think probably ranks higher than probably any of the other studios' outputs. There's just something about that. There's just a magic watching the stuff that Walt did and everything that he, post-Walt years and then going to the parks, there's just something almost indescribable about the magic and sort of the goosebumps that you get from watching a Disney film. I haven't missed a Disney film in theaters day one in I think about 20 years.
Wow, that's incredible. And your research runs really deep with projects that you're working on and involved in. So it's really exciting to have your brain to pick on a regular basis.
Oh, I'm happy. Yeah, I feel like it's not all for nothing, you know. It's not all going to waste now, filling my head with this knowledge. So I'm overjoyed and really happy to be sharing it with the Mahoning crowd. I hope that it kind of adds, you know, a nice context to the night, and you know, people walk away not only enjoying the films, but you know, learning a thing or two. That's always fun.
Absolutely. All right, so we just wanted to remind you guys, tickets are available for this Friday and this Saturday. We are going to be announcing it tonight. It probably will be out by the time this hits your ears. We are going to be doing Free Kids Friday for this event. So if you guys want to come out, bring your munchkins, write a passage. Like I say, maybe not for every munchkin, but certainly if you have that right munchkin, let's do this thing. So bring them on out. You could save a couple bucks on Friday. And then Discount Disney kicks off in May, on May 9th, with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which we had an amazing time with our good friend Gary, who created Roger Rabbit. That podcast is going to be for your ears to enjoy in the near future. And then we jump into the recently announced May 23rd, Escape to Witch Mountain. Is it Escape to or from?
You always want to say from, but it is Escape to. Yeah, it was Escape to Witch Mountain and Return to Witch Mountain. And then many, many moons later, there was that sort of semi-pseudo remake with The Rock, Race to
with The Rock. Yeah.
Right.
Race to. Yes. Right. Yes. And also on June 13th, which is also a Sunday, we're going to be doing a single feature of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which was also recently announced. So if you guys want tickets for any of those, mahoningdit.com for all the dates, the deets, and all that great stuff. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, as always, hanging out with our guys here and hanging out with the fans. If you guys are in the area, again, swing on by. Do not hesitate. We're open almost every single day of the week now. It feels like we're getting into that mode. So check the calendars, swing on out, show the Mahoning some love. For the Mahoning Drive-In Radio Podcast, I'm Virgil.
I'm Mark.
And I am Mike, co-host of the I Eat Movies podcast. And I'm going to be your host and introducer to the Darkside of Disney features this weekend. So happy to be a part of all of this. And I really urge all of you guys to come. It is such a rare and incredible thing to see these Disney features splashed across a screen as beautiful and big as the Mahoning on glorious 35mm. So definitely come check it out. Again, tickets are available now.
Dreams come true. I always said the image of the mouse ears coming up over behind the Mahoning screen, it's like, it's a homecoming, baby. Be there. Be there.
There's no place like the Mahoning.
There it is. I love it. All right, guys. On that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.